Hello, friends. This is your WebEx Back to School training recap. We're going to hit some of the high notes as some reminders for you while we are working through back to school. So, first thing, just a reminder about synchronous and asynchronous. Remember, synchronous is live instruction, and we're using Cisco WebEx for that instruction. And asynchronous is your on demand instruction that can happen anytime, anywhere. And we are using Seesaw for grades pre K through second and Google Classroom as our platform for third grade through 12th grade. Remember, when you are accessing WebEx, if you are scheduling a meeting, you should be doing that via the browser and through the portal login. If you are running a meeting or joining a meeting, you should be doing that from the downloaded desktop app version of Cisco WebEx Meetings. If when you join from the portal and you click on the Cisco WebEx tile, it brings you right back to the portal again and does not open Cisco WebEx, you do need to clear your browser cache. This helpful little screen I have made into a PDF and is available via our website as well. So these are the steps you would need to do in order to be able to access Cisco WebEx from the browser. A few reminders about that personal room versus scheduled meetings. If you are meeting with students in a scheduled class period type meeting, you should be using a scheduled meeting, and you should have set up those scheduled meetings during your back to school training session. So you'll have one meeting per class period or per grouping when you meet with students. If you're having spontaneous meetings, your personal room is the better bet, but just be sure that you lock your personal room once you start it and admit only the people that need to be in that room so that outsiders do not come in. The ability to have a lobby before attendees join is coming to scheduled meetings, but it has not been released yet. Remember, when you are making your scheduled meetings for each of your class periods, to include your teacher name and then the rotation if you are an elementary school teacher, and if you're a secondary teacher, include the class period and course name. This is to organize yourself as well as anyone who has joined your meeting. And also, please remember to use these same naming conventions for your Google Classroom. You're going to have a lot of people possibly in your Google Classroom as co-teachers, and this will help them as well as the students be able to find the classes that they need. Remember, when you have set up your individual class period meetings, to set the recurrence pattern to daily, every weekday, and no end date. This way, this meeting link will remain the same for the entire year, depending on if we have to jump in and out of virtual learning. When you're setting up your meeting and you add attendees, if you add attendees from the school district, they will have the meeting show up in their WebEx portal or in their desktop app. Currently, right now, you can set an alternate host. Soon, WebEx will be adding the ability to have a co-host. So the co-host would be able to have all of the same abilities as the normal host. Set that co-host the same way you set an alternate host. They're just changing the name of it. But for now, all the alternate host can do is start the meeting for you, and then they retain all of the host rights. And then a few options to remember when you're scheduling your meeting that you may or may not want to change. Entry and exit tone by default is set to no tone, but you may want to change it to beep to notify you when people enter and exit the meeting. Automatic recording, it is recommended that you check that box to automatically start the recording when your meeting actually begins, in case you need to share the classroom recording with students who may have been absent or who need them as part of their special requirements. And then a reminder to leave off other participants under private chat. That way, students cannot participate in chats with each other. Remember, once you set your meeting, that meeting link is what you will need to post for students to be able to access. In Seesaw, you will set this up as an announcement. And in Google Classroom, you will create a material in classwork, have it set to no topic. That way, that link will be pinned up at the top of your classwork section, so students will always know where to go to get that meeting link. Remember, when running a WebEx meeting, you want to do this from the desktop application and not the browser. The desktop application will give you a lot more settings that are not available via the desktop browser version. Additionally, you want to make sure you're running this from a computer and not from an iPad. If you're hosting from an iPad, you're not going to get the same settings that you would get when running it from a computer. In the meeting controls, your other options with the three dots is where you will be able to find the polling and the lock meeting options. So those are the two to highlight here, as well as if you are recording a meeting manually and you did not set it to automatic. Whenever you click that record meeting button, you're going to get an option that says, do you want to save to the cloud or to the computer? Be sure to save to the cloud. That way you will easily be able to access the recording and download and share with others. This button also acts as a pause button during a recording session. So if you hit that record button while it's already recording, it will pause the recording, and then you can click on the button again to resume, so it will create one long recording. Here in your participant panel, one thing to note is if you set mute on entry, so if you go to the participant panel and select mute on entry, as participants join, they will be muted and they will not be able to unmute their microphone during the meeting. You would have to do it for them. So if you're going to use this setting, make sure once everyone is in that you turn that setting off. That way they will be able to unmute and speak to you. Also, for individual participants in the meeting, you can right click on any one of them. A few notes here, you can stop their video from this panel if need be. So if something is happening on the video that you need to stop, go ahead and right click on that participant and choose stop video. You can also right click on a person to chat with them individually. You can also move a participant to the lobby, which is your waiting room. Elementary teachers, it is recommended that you move all of your students to the lobby during lunchtime and then readmit them back into the lesson after the lunchtime is over. And then the last option on this menu is expel. So you can basically kick someone out of the meeting if they should not be in it. You also have the ability to change a participant's role, so you can change them to a presenter or a host. One note, do not make students the host or the presenter. If you do this, you're giving them extra rights and privileges in the meeting. And if you make a student the presenter, they're going to have to pass the presenter role back to you. Additionally, they may share content on their device without your approval first. So if you want to share student work, have them share it with you via Google Classroom or Seesaw, and then open that work on your device and you share that content. The chat panel, one thing to note here is on the iPad, the chat panel is not permanently pinned on the screen. It will pop up when they open it, and then when they close it, it will go away. You may want to save your chat. If you want to save the chat before you end the meeting, be sure to click yes to save the files, and then make sure to select chat and save it to whatever folder you specify. It's recommended that you save your chats for each meeting just in case you need to refer back to them for attendance or any other options that you may have missed during the meeting. If you do not save before ending your meeting, then you cannot access that chat afterwards. So make sure to save while you're ending the meeting. In your polling panel, be sure to save the polls if you want to be able to access them later. So you could open up your personal room and create your polls and save them. If you did want to change any options here, you can click on the options button to change the time limit, and always make sure to check that box for record individual responses. That way you will know which students answered what before you send that poll. When sharing content, two big highlights here. One is make sure you're optimizing for whatever type of content you're sharing. So if you're sharing text and images, optimize for that. If you're sharing videos, you need to change that setting to optimize for motion and video. You can change this setting after you're already sharing the content without having to stop and start again. And then a reminder that if you are sharing your screen, your email that includes Outlook, Gmail, any mail you could possibly have open, and your Cisco Jabber screen both be completely off. That way nothing accidentally pops up in the screen. Also, make sure any tabs or anything you possibly have open on your computer screen is school appropriate. That way you don't accidentally share something you shouldn't be sharing. This also goes for the iPad as well. So make sure any content on your iPad, if you are sharing your iPad screen, is also school appropriate. And then a highlight here for while you're sharing your content is this is your tool panel that will appear at the top of your screen and will disappear when you move your mouse away from it. The pause button is similar to freeze on your Promethean remote, so you can pause the screen for students to see one thing while you're working on your own screen. Also, if you want to change what you are sharing content screen and your optimized settings, you would click on the share button to change those settings. There's also a preview button at the bottom so you can preview what your participants are actually viewing while you're working. And remember to practice with a buddy. So practice hosting a session, testing out the audio on the device you're hosting from, so your microphone and your speakers. Test out your host tools, and then also make sure to test out the device you are using to share from. Also, you want to make sure that you join a meeting as a participant so that you can see what it's like to be a student joining the meeting. And we would suggest you do this if you are a teacher with an iPad and students who have iPads. Test this out from an iPad as well as from a computer so that you can see what your students may see. And again, practice, practice, practice before September 8th, the first day of instruction. And then we're going to hit a couple of tips for virtual instruction. Your norms and expectations are going to work the same way in a virtual setting as they would in a face-to-face classroom. Set those norms, give the students the expectations, give them a tour of what they need to do in your class while using WebEx as well as using Seesaw and Google Classroom so that they know what the expectations are for your classroom. And then after your meeting is over, if you need to pull an attendance report, it does take a little time for that report to become completed. It will give you a preliminary report at first, and then you can go back and pull the final report. These are the steps that you would use to do that. These reports can be accessed for 3 months after the meeting date, so you may want to get into the habit of at the end of the week, download the reports for the previous week or do it the next day so that you have these reports just in case there is a question about attendance on your live meetings. So this has been your recap of your WebEx Back to School training. If you have any questions or need specific help about a specific topic, remember you can always go to our EdTech website at gccisd.net/edtech to be able to view all of our help videos. On our website, you'll go to the staff section and click on Cisco WebEx to be brought to help videos on how to use Cisco WebEx meetings grouped by individual topics, as well as some tips and tricks, schedule and start a meeting, the WebEx meeting app on a mobile device, some other tips included on other tabs. Additionally, we have resources for students and guardians on the Student and Guardian tab. If they click on Cisco WebEx, we have a video that shows how a participant would use WebEx from an iPad and from a laptop, and we will be adding in a one-page quick guide on what the tools are in Cisco WebEx from both an iPad and a laptop, and we will have this available in Spanish as well. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please let us know.